Sorry. I need to
All
run.
right, we have breaking news to bring you, and it's a bit of a shocker. I mean, we were told that this case, the Zoe Rosenberg trial, was going to go on possibly till the end of this month. The prosecution's case against this 23-year-old animal cruelty investigator for Direct Action Everywhere, accused of taking 4 chickens from Purdue slaughterhouse. This was something that was supposed to go on for the entire month. The prosecution's case just started a couple of days ago, and now we've just found out from Matthew Zerbel, our reporter at the scene, that the prosecution has rested its case in chief. We're so excited to have actress, activist, former defendant, acquitted Alexandra Paul with us. But first, let's go out to the courthouse. What happened, Matthew?
Yeah, so the prosecution, as it turns out, is not calling very many witnesses in their direct case. That's their opening where they get to make their full statement first. They can still, I believe, call witnesses if they need to rebut things that come up in the defense. We expect the defense to be much longer for that reason. But the prosecution called and finished with their last witness today, someone who was one of the security and quality assurance managers at the slaughterhouse, and finished going through her investigation after the entries to the slaughterhouse and finally the rescue on the 13th.
So, Matthew, give us a rundown of exactly, how many people the prosecution called. I know they called a police officer. I know they called 2 people from the company in question. One, I guess, a cybersecurity expert, and then another one, a woman who has another function. I mean, is that it? How many people did they call?
Unless I'm forgetting one right now, I believe that was all the people that they called. Yeah.
3 people in the prosecution's case. I am shocked, honestly. Thank you. Stand by, please, because we want to come back to you. But if you see anybody from Direct Action Everywhere, like Cassie, maybe go track them down for a minute or two, and then we'll see if we can talk to them, Matthew, because this is a very big development, in my opinion, having covered many trials. There you see Zoe Rosenberg committing the rescue for which she is charged. And you see those chickens packed in there. She didn't just grab the first chicken she saw. She looked around and she said she found chickens that were visibly sick and suffering. So I want to go to Justine Block. Justine, you are an attorney. You're not as shocked at over the fact that the prosecution has already rested its case. Tell us, what are your thoughts on this? Justine.
Hey, Shane, my thoughts, I'm here. Are you able to hear me okay? My thoughts are that this is, it's interesting that the prosecution has rested already. I am a little surprised they haven't brought more witnesses, because it is the prosecution's responsibility to prove all of the elements of every crime she's charged with beyond a reasonable doubt. So we have to keep that in mind, that it is the prosecution's responsibility to prove the elements of all of these crimes. And they're relying very much on the video that you're showing of Zoe actually there taking the chickens from the truck. So that kind of does cut both ways, because the prosecution is relying on that to show she committed the acts. But they also have to show her intent. And with this last witness that testified about the financial, Matthew, we don't have him right now, but when he comes back to the camera, maybe he can talk more about that witness's testimony. Because from what I read in the X posts, is she didn't have reliable information on the specific financial losses. So for one of the trespass elements, remember, there's the felony conspiracy charge. There's the 2 trespass charges, and then there's the 4th charge of tampering with a vehicle. So for one of the trespass charges, there's one aspect of it. I'll just read to you for count number 2, and this relates to what the business records witness talked about today, because she was talking about the business losses. So for count 2, the crime of trespass with intent to interfere, a misdemeanor. This is the charge that it was committed by the defendant who unlawful the defendant.
Well, the bottom line. What's the bottom line that point you're making there?
So basically, the point is that these elements have to be proven, and the aspect of this count 2 with the has to be a purpose of injuring property or property rights with the intention of with the business. So they have to prove
with the intention of interfering. Got it. Okay, so I want to go to Alexandra Paul.
But one other, I'm sorry, it is a longer point to read the charge, but I just want to make sure it's clear, is that, so this witness is testifying as to the losses of the business, but not that Zoe specifically caused those losses, because her position is that she went in to rescue. She wasn't going in to interfere with their business. So that point just seems to be completely missed by the prosecution.
Thank you for that update. All right, Alexandra Paul, you have been through this. You were a defendant in another case that also involved animal rescue. And we are going to show a little bit of that as we talk to you, because it really was a very dramatic rescue that you and your colleague Alicia Santurio participated in. I believe this was back in 2021, or your case was in 2021, several years ago. You were acquitted because, first of all, you took the stand and you were very articulate and persuasive, but also there's a theory that you were acquitted because you were charged with theft, and that really allowed the discussion of the condition of the quote unquote property, which are these living sentient beings, and you were able to, in a way, paint them as more than mere products. What are your thoughts about the prosecution's case resting so quickly?
Well, I'm curious because as I understand it from what Zoe says on her social media, is that Petaluma Poultry says that it cost them $100,000 because of her actions, and in subsequent security and investigations, I guess, which seems very far-fetched. Also curious about the fact that the prosecution subpoenaed a bunch of activists and clearly didn't put them on the stand. I don't know, is that not their case in chief, and they're going to bring them back? It's just reserves the right for them to bring them back later. Is that what's going on?
I think that they were called primarily, correct me if I'm wrong, as rebuttal witnesses, so that when Zoe testifies, they can bring on a rebuttal case. They're really playing a very intricate chess game here. Okay, they learned from your acquittal, yeah. And they are doing things differently, like the conspiracy charge. I don't believe you were charged with conspiracy, right? So you were charged with theft. You took the stand. You were convincing. You were acquitted. They go, oh my God, we got to do this differently. That's why Wayne Shung, the co-founder of Direct Action Everywhere, was charged with conspiracy. And he was also gagged, so he couldn't even speak to the media in his own defense. There were no cameras in the courtroom, no video in the courtroom, just like this. And they even shut down a sketch artist who was trying to sketch all the people in the courtroom, and said you can only sketch the defendant, I believe. I mean, it was really, let's shut this down. I think they're trying to do it with this, but they've got a different judge who refused to gag Zoe Rosenberg. Yeah. And so if I had to guess, I think that the prosecution is saying, let's do a very little case in chief. Let's let Zoe testify. Then we're going to come back with guns blazing, with, let me use another terminology, full force in our rebuttal case. And, they won't see what's coming. Yeah. But we see what's coming because here we are discussing it.
Well, clearly, they also wanted to play a lot of her own social media, which Matthew, you can tell us what apparently her videos about Petaluma Poultry from when she was 14, which is what, almost 10 years ago, 8 years ago. So they clearly want to paint her as an activist, a fringe activist. And they think that just having the video of her doing the rescue is going to put her in bad stead with the jury. I actually think that her being as open and honest as possible and not hiding anything is the key to her acquittal, because I think the jury will see that she is a thoughtful, caring person. She did not go in there with malicious intent against the company. It was solely to rescue those animals. And that's the key to her prosecution. And I know that she's going to be very honest. And actually I know that they didn't want all those social media to go before the jury, but I think if they ended up before the jury, it wouldn't be hurtful, because the jury would just see she's a passionate activist, nonviolent one at that.
Yeah, she was talking yesterday about the fact that in a 402 hearing outside of the jury's presence, the prosecutor was dramatically reading her social media posts from when she was 14, saying, I want to create a sanctuary. I believe in animal sanctuaries, as if that's somehow a criminal. And of course, she has created a sanctuary. This is the Happy Hen Farmed Animal Sanctuary. She and her mom, who is a veterinarian, who's also supposed to testify in this case, created. Look at this beautiful Happy Hen sanctuary. What's criminal about this? What is terrible about this? So I want to play a couple of sound bites that she has recorded about this case, talking about the money. I always say, when it comes to animal agriculture, follow the money. Let's hear this, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Deputy Arvizo wrapped up his testimony, and then we heard from the head of security at the slaughterhouse. And during her direct, she testified to various pieces of security footage, and the prosecutors wanted her to testify to financial loss from Petaluma Poultry due to downtime and delayed production. And we had a 402 hearing outside of the presence of the jury right before we wrapped up court to determine if she would be allowed to testify to that. And the judge did decide that tomorrow morning she will be allowed to testify to some of the estimated financial loss. Petaluma Poultry is alleging I caused over $100,000 in losses by rescuing 4 chickens from their slaughterhouse.
Wow. Well, I want to bring in Shaka Smith, an attorney. You may not have heard this, Shaka. Thank you for joining us. The prosecution has rested its case in chief, which is a shocker, because we've been warned, and the jury was warned, this case could go on till the end of the month. We suspect they're going to reserve their biggest artillery for the rebuttal case after Zoe testifies. But first of all, what's your reaction to the fact that the prosecution has, I think, a little shockingly rested its case already with approximately only 3 witnesses, and they're claiming that the company in question lost $100,000 due to Zoe's rescue of the 4 chickens? Unmute, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm honestly not surprised that they arrested so early, because what they were really trying to prove was the trespass, and it looks like all the elements of trespass were there. So that part wasn't surprising. What they're trying to get to is that felony conspiracy, and that's really good. That really weighs on the defense and showing that Zoe did not have the intent to commit an unlawful act. And when they are able to present that, then the prosecution can really go and tack that that part of the case. So the fact they arrested their case in chief doesn't surprise me.
Interesting. So I guess what you're saying makes sense, that, okay, they took care of the theft charge. You know, it's not a whodunit. It's a why done it. And that's what the defense said, but it's obvious it's a why done it, because Zoe herself and Direct Action Everywhere, her organization the animal rights organization she's a big part of, they put out the video, just as they always do, because their whole point is to show people what's happening inside these factory farms and these slaughterhouses. I want to go back out to Matthew. What's the reaction amongst those people who have come from all over the country, and some probably even from outside of the country, to support Zoe Rosenberg, to find out that the case in chief of the prosecution is already rested?
Yeah, I think the main reaction around here has been people are a little bored of the prosecution's case, as you said, it's a why done it, and all they've been doing has been going over generally the same footage through multiple witnesses, very similar footage across different nights, but they have to very rigorously go through all like the same pieces about each night to establish all the facts, lay proper foundation. And so their cases felt very repetitive, going through the same footage with multiple witnesses. And so people are kind of bored, honestly, of their case, and they're excited to get to the why done it part, excited for the prosecution's case.
Well, guess what? The worst thing you could do is bore a jury. When juries can create resentments against, if they feel their time is being wasted. And frankly, if I were told, and I have never been picked for a trial, probably for being a journalist, I don't know, for whatever reason, or maybe I was wearing two different colored pairs of socks or whatever, but I've never been picked for a jury. But I know if somebody picked me for this case and said, you have to spend 6 weeks of your life deciding whether this woman is guilty of conspiracy because she took 4 chickens, I would be personally livid. Lindsay Baker, you're probably the closest to an average juror in the sense that, no, and that's a compliment. You know, it's the highest thing one can do as a citizen. What would your reaction be if you were called to be on this case?
Well, it's really, frankly, a little bit hard for me because I am a vegan, and assuming I probably would be asked a couple of questions about animal rights or kind of get my feel about how I like animals, et cetera, how much I like animals, I probably wouldn't get chosen. But assuming that I'm not me, I'm someone else that's a little bit less informed, a little bit on the outside thinking I'm buying organic chicken and I'm doing something good. And besides, what else are we going to eat? You know, uninformed person. I would still feel that this is a ridiculous case. Number one, I would look at the age of the person. I would look at how the person, you know, the authenticity, as everyone was speaking about, of the person and what they did and what they put on the line. And I would get very annoyed. And I think what I would do, which you're not supposed to do as a juror, I would have already made my decision. And it would be to acquit her.
Wow. All right. I want to play another. This is the day of their arrest. Several others were arrested, but only Zoe was ultimately charged. There she is getting handcuffed along with some other members of Direct Action Everywhere and stuck in a police car, a law enforcement vehicle. You see some of the other folks from Direct Action Everywhere there. And there's that police officer preening. I don't know what it is. Maybe he's just looking around. But the sheriff's department taking off. In the 20 months that followed, Zoe Rosenberg had to wear an ankle monitor. She is also suffering from a lifelong health problem. And she says going behind bars for up to 5 years could literally be life or death for her because she was told when she was initially arrested, they didn't have the facilities to deal with all her medical issues. So this is a very brave young woman. Let's hear more from her talking about what the police officer, law enforcement officer, Arvizo said in court yesterday. We'll talk about it on the other side.
My attorneys will be cross-examining Deputy David Arvizo, and hopefully we'll be able to ask him about how the Petaluma Police Department has failed to respond to reports of criminal animal cruelty at Purdue's Petaluma Poultry Slaughterhouse. We crossed Deputy Arvizo. My attorney asked him if he was aware that I had reported criminal animal cruelty to the Petaluma Police Department prior to June 13th. And he testified that he was not aware and that he did not do any sort of evaluation of the bird's welfare that night. However, he had previously testified during a preliminary hearing that he was aware of animal cruelty reports. So this bit of a discrepancy there.
So going back to our expert panel, Alexandra Paul, what do you make of that? I mean, this is a small town. This isn't like New York City. My personal feeling is you would have to be living under a rock, since they're always protesting around there for years, not to be aware that there had been allegations of animal cruelty, which, by the way, the company denies, and we invite them on anytime.
Well, I think Matthew Zerbel also was there the day she was arrested, and she was walking over to deliver a criminal complaint about Petaluma Poultry when they arrested her. So that was a big irony there. And she has, everyone knows about DXE and their allegations, especially the police department. So I think it's really going to have an effect on the jury. The emphasis on the fact that the police never investigated any of the complaints of animal cruelty. So Zoe went in herself. I think that will be very powerful. And I think that they will get even more pissed off at Petaluma Poultry for that, for arresting a 22-year-old. Well, she was 20 when she was arrested. So, but putting on trial a 22-year-old who has for a long time been trying to protect these chickens. And finally, because law enforcement didn't act, went in herself.
Yeah. And here's just a little of a summary of a testimony of this officer. The question from the defense: did you look into any possible criminal animal cruelty happening there? The officer: no, I walked in and I only saw one truck loaded with animals. One or two trucks, only one. And then the defense attorney, I think in a very clever way, gets in the system, brings in the cruelty of the system. Based on familiarity, would you say that truck contains approximately 4,000 chickens? The answer is kind of irrelevant whether he knew it or not. Just the idea that a truck is packed with 4,000 chickens, okay? To me, that says, that's got to telegraph something to the jury, Alexandra.
Well, you can see in the footage that Matthew says they keep playing over and over, that those chickens are packed in. In fact, she has trouble opening it because it's so heavy with chickens. And so clearly there's animal cruelty. The question, and the lawyers on this panel will be able to answer it better: will the judge narrow and pretty much sort of, I don't want to use the word hog tie, but will they tie the hands of the jury so that they have to charge Zoe with something and not consider animal cruelty at all? That is a question. And this judge seems very fair because I was there the first couple days of the trial, but the law has not moved very far forward for animals. So it's really a question of, I believe, and please have the lawyers comment on this, whether the parameters of the charges will allow the jury to consider animal cruelty.
And is this, technically, I just want to know, can you see this video?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great. All right. Well, let's just do a quick round robin with the attorneys. I mean, Justine, do you think that animal cruelty in some way, shape, or form will be considered by the jurors?
Well, it remains to be seen in the jury instructions. We'll have to see what the judge says. I will say, with Wayne's conviction on felony conspiracy, in his appeal, he did argue that the judge restricted his intent too much and argued that there was an incorrect narrowing of the scope and of the intent, so the jury was precluded from considering his good faith belief in the right to rescue as a valid defense. So I think the judge here, Judge Noce, is allowing the line of questioning. It was very clever the way the defense attorney has been able, with questioning the police officer, to get in the prior investigation. You didn't know, did you know about the animal cruelty, that she had complained about animal cruelty? And the officer witness was also caught in an inconsistency, because at first he said no, that he didn't know Zoe had complained about animal cruelty and had asked for investigations. And then the defense attorney said, well, actually you testified previously that you did know about the animal cruelty. So
yeah, and it was a question of, I believe, in fairness, it was a question of when he learned about it. But I want to go quickly to Shaka, and then we're going to go back out to, I know you only have 4 minutes, Alexandra, so let's get Shaka's response, and then I have one other question for you, and then we'll go back to Matthew. Go ahead, Shaka.
Yeah, so the judge seems like he's not going to let animal cruelty be considered as part of any defense to the trespass, but he's allowing it for the state of mind of Zoe that might negate the conspiracy charge. So, and it looks like he's giving them a wide berth to use a lot of that information. So it looks like it's going well in that regard, and it's good for the jury to hear all that information.
Well, thank you for that, Shaka. I want to play another thing that really stood out to me, and this is the fact that this police officer was asked whether he interacted with the animals. And he said, I wouldn't interact with those products. And that set off so many comments on social media that the police officer is treating these sentient beings as mere products. I mean, to me, that is the essential cultural divide. And before we attack him, anybody who goes to the grocery store and buys a chicken product is doing the same thing, except that they're doing it after the animal has died. What are your thoughts on that, Alexandra?
Well, I know that the defense will use the names poppy, ivy, azalea, and aster a lot, so that, and they will also gender them. They will not be it. And we did that in our trial, so much so we named the chickens are named Jax and Ethan. The prosecution in the beginning called them it and the chickens, and then they started calling them by their names towards the end of the trial. So I know that Chris and Kevin, her attorneys, and Zoe herself, and all the DXE activists who will testify will use their names and their genders, and not to treat them like products.
And there you are in your case. Again, you were acquitted. This was several years ago. And you also, it was videotaped. It's an open rescue. And then you explained to the jury what open rescue was all about. Can you give us a summary of that and what you think your most effective remarks to the jury were?
Open rescue is when activists go into a facility and document the situation, and also if there is a sick animal, we are able to provide healthcare and a sanctuary for them, we will rescue them. And we do that without covering our faces. And in fact, we put it on the internet with our names often, and as Alicia and I did, and as Zoe has. And this sort of forces a spotlight on the company who's spending so much energy trying to cover up things, and we are being completely open. It kind of makes us invulnerable, because they can't attack us for anything, because we'll tell them anything. Yes, I was there. Yes, I removed that chicken. Yes, I believe that there's cruelty. We're not hiding anything, and that is our strength. That is our strength, and it is Zoe's strength too. She's been on social media for years talking about the cruelty at this place, and then she acted, and she also put that on social media. It's hard to make that look bad, really. It really is, and that's what the Petaluma Poultry and the prosecution are trying so hard to do, is they're trying to vilify her, and I don't think it's going to work.
Well, I want to thank Alexandra Paul. I know you're a very busy lady. I appreciate you so much for coming on. And I know you're going to come back every so often. So we'll keep sending you the links and join when you can.
Thank you, everybody. And especially you, Jane, for keeping this in the spotlight. Bye, y'all. See you soon.
It's a team effort. Thank you. So by the way, before we move on, I want to invite the company on at any time. The company has denied all animal cruelty allegations. Purdue says it has high animal welfare standards. And they have also said that they regard all these claims as false, pushed by an extreme group, DXE, with the ultimate goal of ending animal agriculture altogether and opposing a radical agenda that would threaten the livelihoods of Sonoma County farmers. Here is their website, corporate.purduefarms.com/responsibility/animal-care. Check it out. We invite that company on anytime. We would love to dialogue. I want to get back to the societal cultural battle happening here. And I think it was epitomized by the comment in court during the prosecution's case while they were interviewing, or maybe it was when the defense was doing the cross-examination. I can't remember at this time. I don't want to be wrong. But the police officer did say, I would not interact with these products because of contamination risk. When he's talking about live animals in a truck. Also, the fact that the defense was able to bring out that in these trucks, 4,000 approximately, according to the defense, 4,000 animals are packed into these trucks. Obviously, that is something that these animals would not want to be in. Is this an example of the culture war, the war about who are animals? Are they mere products, or are they sentient beings with eyes and hearts who have the ability to feel pain and suffering and deserve rights? Take it away. Let's start with Lindsay Baker.
Well, of course they're not objects. And I think, when you get a person, if a person looks at a chicken, let's say they're at a sanctuary or a petting zoo, which petting zoos are very bad, and that's a whole other subject, but they're gonna have to acknowledge that it's a living, feeling thing. It's just a matter of how much consciousness they put into that and how much brainwashing is out there, especially because so many people, not only what, almost 9 million chickens a year are killed.
No, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to correct you.
Sorry, 9 billion.
No, 75 billion.
Really? I looked it up. Okay.
Over 7. You could be talking about the United States. I'm talking about globally.
Okay.
Chickens don't know.
It's a lot.
Chickens don't know national boundaries.
Yeah.
140,000 chickens are killed every minute on this planet. The most killed animal for food. So therefore,
my point was, it's not just for food. They're used in so many ways. Feathers. I mean, these, like I said, these things where they have parties and they bring animals to the party. They are used as objects. I was a child. I was given a chicken and a duck, and I think I got salmonella poisoning, but my parents didn't know. I don't know how prevalent that is in our part, like California, but I know in some places it's probably going on. They're just looked upon as an object.
Yeah. And I mean, all animals are treated brutally in the factory farming system. Observers would say, I'm saying it, that's my opinion. Industrialized animal, there's no nice way to kill one animal or any living being who doesn't want to die. But to kill 140,000 every minute on this planet, and I am not talking about any one particular company, Shaka. I am talking about industrialized animal agriculture that is a relatively new phenomenon in human history, just like fast food is a relatively new phenomenon in in human history. These are not traditions. Industrialized animal agriculture is new. The Industrial Revolution itself is only a couple of 100 years old.
Well, I think these are things that we don't necessarily know growing up. And so it's a culture war, and it's on the prosecution side. If I'm the prosecution, I'm telling all the witnesses I call, don't refer to them in any way that humanizes the chicken. I want them to be viewed as products. But at the same time, if the defense is doing their job, they're going to be watching the jury. And if the jury starts to get offended by the way the prosecution is referring to these animals, then they will start to shift, and they might start referring to them by name in order to appease the jury to get their point across.
And again, if you're just joining us, the prosecution rested his case after only calling 3 people. Remember, it took 4 weeks to get to opening statements. That's how controversial this case is. And the truth is that it was very difficult to pick a jury, in part because a lot of people in this town, this community, know about this case, and because a flyer was sent out by Animal Agriculture to thousands of people, if not everybody. I don't know. A lot of people. This glossy flyer was sent out to Sonoma County residents before this trial, right before this trial, or as this trial was getting started. Stand with Sonoma County poultry workers. Okay, so right there, some would argue that's an attempt to influence the jury because they were just getting jury selection underway. So it took so long to pick this jury. And now, in just a couple of days, the prosecution has rested its case in chief, which was the breaking news we brought you at the start of this broadcast. However, it doesn't mean that they have just said, okay, we're done. After Zoe Rosenberg testifies, and frankly, we're assuming, Justine Block, that Zoe Rosenberg is going to testify. You never know. A decision is never announced about that in advance. Is that not true?
My understanding is that she is planning to testify based on the information coming out from the defense, but we'll have to see. And the judge had reserved making a decision on whether the rebuttal witnesses, the 2 remaining rebuttal witnesses, would be allowed to testify in a rebuttal.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're absolutely right. She's expected to testify. In most cases, and I've covered many, many criminal cases where the big question is the defendant going to take the stand? I remember with Casey Anthony, she didn't take the stand. Everybody's wondering. Then I remember with Jodi Arias, and I'll never forget that moment. It was broadcast live on television. They took a quick break, and all of a sudden, there's Jodi Arias headed for the witness stand. And everyone was like, oh my God. And you know how many days she stayed on that witness stand? Something like 18 days. One of the longest testimonies I've ever seen. And she seemed to be enjoying quite a bit of it, which was something the jurors who convicted her took note of, perhaps. But it's not just, is Zoe going to take the stand? How long is she going to be on the stand? So these are things that make this trial extremely compelling. And Unchained TV is going to bring you the very latest every single day. We're going to go live at 1 p.m. Pacific. And the court's dark on Wednesdays, but that doesn't stop the members of Direct Action Everywhere from going around and doing all sorts of activities. If the idea was, if the prosecution or the district attorney's idea was, let's drag this trial out, those folks that have come from all over the country to support Zoe, they'll drift off after a couple of weeks, and they're going to be tired of waiting. I don't think they really know what these folks are like, because every time there is a day off or the court is dark, this is an example. They did a caravan to factory farms all across Northern California, driving for 200 miles, marching, chanting. These are generally young people and full of energy. And every time court goes dark, they get even busier. So that's another reason why I think it's really, really very questionable. How could you possibly, as an investigator, as a police officer who's living in this community where this has been a dominant controversy for years and years and years, with various open rescues in Northern California, anybody who really lives in the United States probably knows about this, much less in Northern California, where he says he went in there and did not have any idea that there were animal cruelty allegations against this company. Final thoughts. Let's start with Lindsay Baker. And again, we're going to be back Monday. It's going to be a big day. It's the start of the defense case on Monday. Lindsay.
I'm very excited, because who knows what we're going to find out on Monday. But the one thing I did notice, and this is just my observation, it seems like the prosecution is bagging, because now, isn't it like they just brought up this $100,000 loss? Wouldn't that have been stated earlier? I'm not sure. I don't know. Also, the dismissal of the 2 witnesses, they decided they weren't going to have them testify. And also, I just think overall, it's not going the way they want it to go. And I think they might be rethinking how they're going to address this whole situation and try to get the case tried in their favor.
Well, let me say this. They did offer Zoe Rosenberg plea bargains, and she declined. Essentially, according to her, risking her life to make this point about chickens being sentient beings who are deserving of rights and who have a right not to be subjected to pain and suffering. This is her argument. But just because they offered her plea deals doesn't mean, and now because they have a short prosecution initial case, their case in chief, doesn't mean they're throwing up their hands. Right. This could be a complete strategy to come back after Zoe testifies, with their big guns. So we'll see. We'll see. Shaka, your final thoughts.
Well, the exciting part about the prosecution arresting is now it's the opportunity for the defense to go for a directed verdict and say the prosecution didn't prove essential elements beyond a reasonable doubt of their case. And so doing that, we might get an acquittal on some of these charges. It would be interesting to see if they acquit, if the judge agrees that the essential element for conspiracy was not proven. So we'll see.
I think you've just raised a very important point. So what you're saying is that when the prosecution rests and then the defense is able to start, there's an opportunity in that window for them to say, this case wasn't established, throw it out. Is that what you're saying? Shocker?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So if the prosecution didn't prove one or more of the essential elements of their case beyond a reasonable doubt, then the judge can say, we don't have to go further. We're dropping that charge.
Wow. Fascinating. All right. Final thought to our attorney, our other fabulous attorney, Justine Block.
Well, we're keeping this going every day on the trial. It's exciting. This is important to see how this moves forward now into the defense's court and to hear the jury. That's really going to be important, how this is framed for the jury. This is in the hands of the jury. The culture war that you talked about is in the hands of the jury. Look forward to coming back on Monday.
Yeah. Thank you all. You're an amazing panel. I appreciate, just for you folks at home watching, this is a lot of hard work by not just myself, but all of our team members who are devoting their time. We have 2 attorneys here who have cases that they have to handle. They're stopping that to give us insight because we really do need attorneys when we're talking about this stuff. So I want to especially thank our attorneys, but also our amazing panelists, Lindsay Baker, host of the Action Hour on Unchained TV. And all we ask of you at home is share this out. Share this out, because while we are replicating networks like CNN or Court TV, both places where I worked and did cover trials, we obviously don't have the reach of a CNN or a Court TV. So we need you guys, gals, to help and share it out far and wide. We will see you Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific. It's going to be a huge day. It's the start of the defense case. Stay right there.